Welcome to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. I am your host, Shana Southern. I am an angel mum, a rainbow mum, a pregnancy loss practitioner, and trauma-informed coach. I created the Institute of Healing Through Pregnancy Loss out of my own experience with loss in the hopes to provide understanding and healing, educating people on pregnancy loss, and creating more women or men in trained support roles. In this podcast, I hope to shed light on what I wish I knew in relation to pregnancy loss, opening up the conversation, breaking the stigma, and bringing real-life stories plus guest experts. Thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome, beautiful souls, to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. Today, I have with me the beautiful Lisa Moore. Lisa is an online birth and life coach, a wife, a mother, a stepmom, and a woman who can trace back her maternal line 7 generations. She is passionate about birth, birthing in power, and a celebrator of all things woman and mother. The woman's sanctum was born out of her own birth trauma after the planned home birth of her son was sabotaged by the hospital system. She started a journey of self-discovery, growth, and actualization, becoming obsessed with all things birth, ultimately graduating as a radical birth keeper and free birth with the Free Birth Society. This fueled her desire to help walk alongside women as they journey through healing from birth trauma or pregnancy loss, and to support women who have decided to birth out of the system. Lisa loves being a woman and being around strong, badass women who live and birth on their own terms. For those women, the Women's Sanctum was created. For women who want to live powerful, pleasurable, and purposeful lives. Thank you so much for joining us, Lisa.
Oh, my absolute pleasure.
Did you want to share more about your path and what has led you to where you are today?
Yeah, so, oh dear. I met my husband when I was about 36, I think, 35. And as soon as I met him, within months, we decided that we would get married. And I was on the baby making train, like before I was down the aisle. And when you know, you know. And I would have said that I was just sort of, I've always been quite a woman that holds quite strong opinions and not afraid to voice them. I'm a Sagittarian, so it's probably part of that. And then, yeah, so you just get pregnant and you just think that that's what's going to happen. And I did not have pregnancy loss on my radar at all, because why would you? And then I think around sort of 10 weeks into the pregnancy, I started to bleed. And when you see that blood and when you know that something is not right, I went to the hospital. I had a couple of scans, and then about 2 weeks later, I had the pregnancy loss confirmed. And that kind of was the start of this whole journey that I've been on for the last 6 and a bit years. Because I then got pregnant very, very quickly, literally days after having the pregnancy loss confirmed. And because I had lost my baby, my second pregnancy was just so fear-based that it consumed everything. And I can't really remember being pregnant that much. I remember not feeling like it was real. And then I had a planned home birth that then became the standard induction, which then progressed to emergency C-section. And I was left with the baby that I wanted, but a massive dose of what I later realized was birth trauma. It took me about 3 years to realize that I was suffering from birth trauma. And then when that clicked, it sort of propelled me into, I was obsessed with birth after having a baby, like listening to birth stories, finding out about free birth, and that there was a radically different way of birthing than the standard that we're told. We're told, go to the hospital. That's where you are the safest. That is where you need to go for all of the information about your pregnancy, and we know best about birth. And that was not my lived experience. Actually, what happened to me, which is very, very standard for a lot of women, I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel respected. And so after having my son and being very obsessed with birth and very kind of listening and reading and talking about birth, I decided to enroll in the Radical Birth Keeper School with the Free Birth Society, and then from there started my business.
I think it's incredible that you were able to, be able to turn your pain into something that was going to serve people and educate people as well. Because, like you said, you're kind of told that this is where you have to go, this is what you have to do, this is the norm. And when that isn't your experience, you're just like, well, if this has not worked for me, there's got to be other people out there that are feeling the exact same way too. And I want to just acknowledge you for sharing about your loss as well, because being the first pregnancy, which is where, I lost my first pregnancy as well, to a miscarriage, and then had my rainbow afterwards. And like you said, the fear that you feel like in those subsequent pregnancies is just next level. And you're not given any support for that, because people are just like, oh, you're pregnant. Like, let's just go through the pregnancy motions. And you're just like, there's so much more to that. There's so much more depth to that, because we've experienced something that, no one wants to talk about.
And we're scared. I think, when you lose a baby, I mean, for me, I didn't want anyone to know. So I told my mum, and obviously my husband knew, but that was it. And I worked at the time as a cabin crew for an airline in the UK. And so when you're pregnant, you can't fly. So if you're grounded, you're put into an office job, but you're very seen. So everybody knows, oh, you must be pregnant because you're not in uniform and you're working in the office. And I was petrified to go to the office once when I was pregnant. And actually, I went to the doctor and I got signed off, because it was just I didn't want people knowing that I was pregnant, because I might lose this baby, essentially. And I didn't announce my pregnancy on social media. Not that, I mean, that seems to be the done thing. Actually, I don't think I would again if I was pregnant again. But nobody knew in my life that I was pregnant even. So I announced that I had a baby, and they're like, oh, what, you were pregnant? Because it was invisible. And I think that also happens when you lose a baby. There's nothing in our culture and our society to really honor that, because my view is, regardless of how pregnant you are, if you've lost a baby, you are a postpartum mother. But we're not seen as that. And there is no, especially if it's an early pregnancy, it's not like you have a ceremony to mark the life of that baby. There is no external thing like a funeral or a ritual, and as humans on a really kind of base level, I think we need that. And that's why I'm passionate about pregnancy loss, because, and inviting ritual and ceremony into that space. When we are grieving, the veil between the worlds is at the thinnest. It's thin when we're in the birth portal, and it's also thin when we are touched with grief. And that's a real gift. And of course, it's heartbreaking, and you do not want to be feeling what you're feeling, having lost a baby. It's, I wouldn't wish it on anyone. It's horrible, and it's intense, and it's exhausting. And then you have the facing your friends getting pregnant, or your sister getting pregnant, or the friend that you were pregnant with having her baby. Like, and you're meant to sit and just get on with that in silence, and you don't have a soundboard to voice those feelings. You can feel love for your friend that's just given birth and be so excited for her, and at the same time be jealous and feel anger that is not, you don't have your baby in your arms. But there's no, I feel like when we lose our babies, it's so lonely. Like postpartum anyway is a lonely experience when you're in your home with your baby. But when you've lost a pregnancy, nobody really knows what to say. Most people don't want to have the conversation, and we need an outlet to share the entirety of that pain, like, and not push down, oh, I feel jealous about my friend, or my sister has got on her fourth baby and I haven't got a baby. Like, you're allowed to feel those feelings, and they need a place to go and be spoken out. So I think that the work that you do and the work that I do is so important, because in society at large, women don't have a place for that.
No, they don't. And so much of what you just said, like, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, yes, yes. There's just so much. Um, I wanted to touch on the postpartum period, because not only is our body experiencing, our physical body experiencing that postpartum, we've got also the hormonal changes, which is going to affect our emotional and mental health as well.
Mm.
As on top of that, like you're grieving. So, you know, and so many women feel like because they don't have anything with them, they've got no living baby, they've got no physical baby, that then they have to push through and have to get on with their life and show up as a wife, as a partner, or if they've got living children, that were born before loss, still showing up as their mom, but completely ignoring the fact that their body is going through that postpartum period and the grief as well. So they're kind of pushing two elements of their healing and recovery aside and going, no, I can't do that because I have to show up. But if you had a living baby, you would automatically honor that postpartum period.
Well, I don't think yes, I can see the chain of thought there and connecting the dots. But how many women do I know that had a baby and then they're unloading the dishwasher a couple of hours later if they've had a home birth, and it's just
True.
like, what are you doing? Like, I live in Darwin. There's an awful lot of women walking around with tiny newborns, and I'm like, I just love on these women, because I'm like, honey, you should be in bed. You should not be in the shopping center with this like day-old baby. But I think our culture at large is sort of, well, you've got to get bounce back and honoring motherhood. There's a beautiful word that I discovered only this year, matrescence. that sort of time period of becoming a mother. And I love it because it took me a couple of years to really get into the groove of being a mother. And actually, I don't think we should just do life as we did before we were pregnant. That's true for when you have a live baby, a live birth, and it's also true when you don't. And I mean, this is a massive, nuanced topic, but I think that especially when you have lost a baby, a lot of women just go about their life, and they may have a couple of days off work, but they feel that they're not allowed to not be normal, if that makes sense. And I don't think that serves us. I think that we should be feeling feelings to completion, and it may take time. Grief is not a straight line, and especially I feel like from my experience getting pregnant so quickly, which is obviously the desired thing, isn't it? You want a baby, but actually I can see how that threw up an awful lot for me, because if you haven't had chance to grieve, if you haven't had chance to look after your body, because our bodies are never the same after pregnancy, regardless of how pregnant we are. Our brains, the chemical makeup of our bodies is radically different after pregnancy and after each pregnancy. I didn't have time to process my grief. The baby that I lost, we called Sprocket. So I'll refer to her as Sprocket. I had no time to process Sprocket, and because I was then pregnant again. And having a pregnancy fueled by fear, it's not good for you. It's not good for your body, for your baby. And also, I don't think it's helpful to the birth portal, because of course, I don't want my baby to die. And I know that babies can die at birth. And so when I'm told, well, you need to do X, Y, Z, and you don't want your baby to die, then I'm more susceptible, because of course, who wants their baby to die? And I think after having a miscarriage, it's incredibly difficult to separate ourselves from the medical system, because they know that you've had a miscarriage. They know that you've had a pregnancy loss. And so they want to medicalize you and your pregnancy and your baby. And I don't think it comes from a bad place. I don't think the hospital wants women to lose babies. That's not their gambit. But this overarching fear that you can feel, especially when you have lost previous pregnancies, that's a big card that kind of can be used to manipulate or to coerce. But tracking back to what you were asking about honoring the postpartum time, I think that for me, one of the most helpful things was yoni steaming, because I found that after having my son, and now I do use it when I'm working with women who have lost pregnancies, because there's so many layers to it. But essentially what yoni steaming is that you sit over a pot of boiling water, so the steam goes up into your yoni. And a couple of years ago, I think Gwyneth Paltrow got a really bad rap on the internet because she was talking about yoni steaming. Yoni steaming has been around for centuries, and you can find it all over the world throughout history. It's a wise woman medicine for women, for women's bodies. But actually connecting with the steam, when you sit over steam, obviously not too hot, you don't want to hurt yourself, but when you sit over steam, the relaxation that you get in your whole body is just, it just feels good. But also there's something energetic and maybe spiritual about pouring your emotions into the water, that's the container of the bowl of water, and then giving the water after your steam to the earth, which is such a simple practice, but at any time in a woman's life, it's potent. But I think as a postpartum woman, all of the emotions that were coming up for you around, especially when you've lost a baby, there's a physical thing that you can allow the emotions to pour out of you energetically and spiritually into that bowl. And you could see you're holding that bowl, and then you're pouring it in onto the earth and giving it to Mother Earth. And there's a relationship there with you and the land that you're living on, because you're giving the water to the land. It's on one level, it's so simple. But on another hand, to be able to do that as a postpartum woman, there's something so magical about it. And every woman has a pot. Every woman has access to water. You don't need to have fancy pants herbs. You can, if you want. If there's a herb that you feel really drawn to, then great. But you can do it with just water or apple cider vinegar. But then it's giving you a physical act and a place for your pain, your emotion to go. And as a postpartum woman, even if you have lost a baby, that act of setting some time for yourself, doing something that's really pleasurable for your body and relaxing for your body, but also then using it as a practice and a space for your emotions to be held and flow, I highly recommend it.
As you were talking, I was like, oh, this is something I'd be really interested in myself, in actually giving it a go, because I've heard about it. I've never actually done it. But you make it sound so simple, but so powerful, because even I've never been also aware of the actual making a ritual out of it, in terms of obviously doing the steaming, which is a ritual in itself, but then returning the water to Mother Earth. Like, it's that in itself too is a really connecting and a really grounding and a really powerful, I guess, part to the ritual too. But also I wasn't aware to make it like to be really mindful while you're doing it, like make it so that you can visualize your emotions and you can help yourself actually process what's happening inside of your body. I think those elements are really powerful to create something for yourself. My question is, how do you sit over the pot? I feel like it's probably
yeah.
I feel like that would be simple.
Yeah, I have a how-to guide, which I can send to you. And if any of your listeners want to swing me a DM on Instagram, then I'm happy to email my guide to them. There are multiple ways of doing it. And you can buy yoni steaming stools on Etsy more than anywhere. But there is a plan in the works, hopefully not in the too distant future, that my husband's designed a yoni chair, and we want to start making those and selling those. But it seems that the ones for me, it seems like the ones, if you want a proper yoni steaming stool and you buy it on Etsy, they're ridiculously expensive for what they seem to be. And so I mean, I made mine out of something that I got from Spotlight. I think it's a plant stand, and we kind of repurposed it. But you can put the bowl on the floor, wrap it in a towel, and kind of do what's the pose? It's gone out of my head. After exercise, child's pose, that's what it's called. You can child pose over the pot. Just obviously be aware of not touching like the steel with your thighs. Or another easy way of doing it at home is using two chairs and have them facing together. And so then you can sit over like the gap and use blankets to obviously cap, because you want the steam to go up your yoni. You don't want it to kind of filter out around. So there are two ways that you can do this afternoon. As long as you're not bleeding, you can steam.
Yeah, that was going to be my other question is obviously, time frames. And I guess if someone has experienced loss, they would be just waiting for their body to go through that to complete like the bleeding process before they could start.
No, well, so after a vaginal birth, you can steam after day 3.
Mm-hmm.
After a C-section, it's you have to wait a number of weeks before you can steam. So, and for pregnancy loss, and if you've had a termination as well, you can steam after day 3 because you're postpartum. So even when that's the sort of, under normal circumstances, don't steam when you're bleeding. It's a contraindicator. It encourages more blood flow. But then after having a pregnancy loss, you're encouraging the flow of your blood, because you bleed for a number of days or weeks after losing a pregnancy. And so again, having that practice, personally, I would say that after, treat it just like a live birth, which is 3 days postpartum.
Yeah, that was the thing because I remember bleeding for quite a bit, through my pregnancy loss, and that was a very traumatic. Well, through the actual, before I could go in for the D&C, there was a lot of, like, I was losing a lot of blood, and then obviously afterwards as well. So it was very traumatic for myself, and I have heard of women, bleeding for weeks after loss. So that was my question of like, yeah, can you still in those circumstances, it's a little bit different in terms of, I guess the intention behind what it's being used for.
Yeah, I mean, obviously each woman has to check in with her own body. Does this feel like it's going to be supportive to my body at this time? Now, yoni steaming has been used as a practice, like I said, for centuries and also all over the world. But it's not just used postpartum. Though it is really helpful if you've torn during your labor. Obviously, that's not the case when you've had pregnancy loss. But also, if you have experienced a D&C, your body has been touched. Your body has been, what's the right word? The external forces have kind of done things to your womb space. And our wombs are sacred. I honestly do believe that our wombs are the portal of life and of death. And sometimes we really don't want to experience the death part. But so many of us women do. And so having that time, especially when you have had people touching this sacred part of you, the steam is just going to encourage blood flow, encourage healing on a physical level, but also like I was saying, the spiritual and the kind of emotional levels as well. Like a lot of times when I steam, because I steam after each bleed, that's my practice. Some months, if I've had a really tough month, I will be crying. There will be emotional release when I'm steaming, because that's just the reaction. And like I was saying, if you've lost a baby that you so longed for, like the pain is immeasurable when you lose a baby. And it's a pain that you don't want to feel. And it's so internal. And so many women hate their bodies after. They blame their bodies. They talk so badly about their bodies. And then go, but I want to be pregnant. And so the act of yoni steaming is loving on our bodies. It's taking care of our bodies and allowing the emotion to flow. I encourage all women really to yoni steam, because it has been such a gift, and it is really one of my go-tos. And if you are experiencing painful periods, if you're experiencing fibroids, if you lots of gynecological issues, so many of us go straight to the pharmaceuticals or straight to procedures, whereas yoni steaming has been proven to cause fibroids to fall out of women's bodies. And so it's a gentle practice, but it's a powerful practice. So yeah, like I said, it's one of my go-tos. My second is castor oil packs. I just think that these two things all women should know about. They're very, very easy to do. It's cheap to do, it's not expensive, and you can do it in your own home. You don't need to go to a practitioner to do these beautiful things for your body, that really can have wonderful cathartic results, but also physical healing for your body. Do you want me to talk a bit about castor oil packs?
Yeah, I was just going to touch on when you mentioned about womb healing as well, because I think after my miscarriage, that was one of the things that I experienced was a real disconnection with my womb space. And when I understood what power our womb space actually holds for us as women in our entire life, not just in terms of pregnancy, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much more to our womb space. And by us choosing not to feel our emotions, choosing to blame ourselves, choosing to hate on ourselves, that all causes disconnection. And it then causes in turn a life that we're not happy to be living. So I love how you brought that sort of piece into it too, in terms of going through the medical interventions has an effect on. One in 4 pregnancies will result in miscarriage. 1 in 8 women will experience infertility. 1 in 100 women will experience recurrent miscarriage. And 1 in 160 births end in stillbirth. Have you been wanting to make a difference in the lives of women or men who have experienced pregnancy loss? because you can see so many suffering in silence, but you just don't know how. Collectively, we can change how bereaved parents can access mental, physical, and emotional support after their experience. There is a lot of women with unhealed trauma, and there is a huge gap in the current support system when it comes to bereaved parents' recovery after loss. There are too many women and men suffering in silence. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is a worldwide, one-of-a-kind program that gives you proven methods designed for healthcare professionals, medical staff, midwives, nurses, doulas, birth workers, coaches, and angel parents alike. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is bridging that gap. It will give you a proven support structure to follow and education specific to pregnancy loss, created by a lost mum. It is creating more education specifically for loss so that you can enhance your service and become the point of difference. Or you can create the support that you so desperately needed in your healing after loss. This is the next level of growth and expansion you have been searching for. So does this sound like something that you have been searching for? Let's explore this more together. You can head to the episode show notes where you'll find the program application, or direct message me on Instagram and let's open up the conversation in how you can use this education. You have a gift, and I look forward to supporting you and witnessing you bring your gift to the world, healing and transforming women's lives. On our womb space, like internally, that you don't externally see, but it has a huge effect. And then for us to turn around and go, I'm choosing now to do something beautiful for myself so that I can reconnect to that womb space, reconnect to my body, and actually love on myself. Like that's just a beautiful thing too.
And I'm hearing myself, and I'm kind of sort of saying again, our culture doesn't a lot. I realize that through this conversation. But if you remember what it was like when you got your menarche, when you started bleeding, what, like, for us as women, it's all about our womb. And the more I think about it, and the more I go through my life, the more this idea is solidified for me. It's all about our womb. So, and I think the medical profession at large don't see things like that. So we're not asked about our experience of our first bleed. Like, we're shoved the pill because we've got spots on our face, and not to belittle, but women are shoved the pill, and it's like, oh yeah, just be on the pill and that will sort your periods out, and that will sort your sex life out, and you're done. But then that causes a massive disconnect. We are so disconnected to the seat of our power, which is our wombs. I didn't know that when I was 15. I didn't know that when I was 27. And I'm only just discovering that. I'm 41. So we're not celebrated. Our wombs aren't celebrated, and we're not told about the power of our cycles. We're told just to sort of take a pill and then just ignore the fact that you are a cyclical being and that you bleed every month. So many women aren't in relationship with their cycles. And since I've been cycling tracking my cycle and understanding my menstrual cycle, I understand myself so much better. And so also the history of my womb, like when I bled as a girl, the pregnancies that I have had, the procedures that I may have had, like smear tests or other things that I have had, it all contributes. It all shapes the woman that we are. And I think that having that time and that space to connect to that sacred part of our womanhood and being in relation to it, it's one of the greatest joys of my life. Seriously. because I am a much more well-rounded woman. I know myself better. And I have to say, if like when you were in relationship with your womb, the choices that you make when you are pregnant and the choices that you make in birth are radically different, because you are now the authority and you don't outsource anything to an external party. We, as soon as we are pregnant, we are told, oh, when it, like, talking about ultrasound. And do we need that external indicator that all is well? I don't. I personally would never get an ultrasound again. And I certainly did not realize that there were risks of ultrasound. And we are not told as women that one of those risks is miscarriage. And so I look at my pregnancy with Sprocket and I'm like, I had a lot of scans. I also had the flu shot. Now, not to go crazy conspiracy and like, oh, she's got her tinfoil hat on, but we're not told the risks of things like the stuff that happens to our bodies from a medical standpoint. And they all sort of become barriers to this beautiful and like amazing relationship with our wombs. Is it done on purpose? I don't know, but I know that a woman that is connected to her womb, she is a sovereign woman, she is a powerful woman. She does not take any shit. And that's quite dangerous to the status quo, isn't it? And that's the type of woman I want to be. That's the type of woman I want to be friends with. That's the type of woman that I want to raise if I had a daughter. I don't want to be around women. I don't want to be a woman that's disconnected to her body. And so like tracking my cycle, being in connection with my womb, which yoni steaming is a sort of a portal to that relationship. Because if you bleed every month, I steam every month. I'm honoring my body. I'm honoring the cycles of my womb. After a pregnancy, I would steam. And so there's that kind of relationship, but also it's taking radical responsibility for your own health.
I think that's the one thing that my loss experience taught me, was there was so much more available to me in terms of my physical and mental health, that I started to strip away all of the stuff that wasn't serving me and started to take up things that were, and really go deeper into certain aspects. And that's where I have heard of yoni steaming a couple of times, but I've never actually actioned it. But especially the womb healing and the womb health, like that was a really powerful thing for me to just have an awareness of as well. But that didn't come from anyone, like you said, it didn't come from the medical system. It came from people outside of that who have obviously experienced things themselves, and they're like, have you tried this? Are you aware of this? And then doing obviously my own research and all of that as well. And I think, you know, my loss taught me to be more in, like you said, to be a sovereign woman, like to be more in control of who you are and your authentic self. Like, who is it that you want to show up as? And that's what my loss gave me, was the ability to strip everything else away and go, well, actually, who am I? What do I stand for? What do I want for my body? And then what practices can I do to reinforce that?
Well, yeah, I totally see that everything that happens to us can be seen that can come along with gifts, even the negatives. So even my traumatic birth, even my loss with Sprocket, even the loss that I had after, like a couple of years ago, I had another loss. What are the gifts? And there is always gifts. You may not see them for a couple of years, or there's always questions that you would never ask before. And actually, when I think of pregnancy loss now, yeah, I talk about it being the shit club. No woman wants to be in that club. It is shit. But I have to say, the last time that I experienced a loss, I did it at home, and I viscerally felt all other women around throughout history who had experienced that as well, because multiple women experience loss multiple times sometimes, and we are all connected. And so the women of my lineage, the women, my ancestors, bet your bottom dollar they experienced loss too. And it felt, when I was going through that, it was quite a spiritual experience, actually, because it wasn't medicalized. I was just at home. And so I was allowed to feel it all and experience it all, unhindered. That connection to other women was incredibly comforting. And so I think that's another reason why the work that you do, the work that I do, is so important, because it's just women supporting women. And we don't need to be pitted against each other. We don't need to be disconnected from our bodies, and we certainly don't need to be disconnected from each other. And so if you have a circle of women just talking about their opening dialogue around their experience of losing a baby, it's incredibly healing and incredibly magical, because that's what we used to do time immemorial. We would, if a woman was giving birth, regardless of how pregnant she was, the women of her village would come round and sit with her and be with her and listen to her and sing to her and brush her hair. And I think all of us, deep down, we want to get back there. We talk about this like magical village, but it's because, like, we're not meant to be doing this in silo. And when you're forced to do it, like, I live in the Northern Territory, I don't live anywhere near my family, they're all in England. So then when shit hits the fan and I need somebody to come in and like help, who have you got? And so many women are in that position, even if they've got family around.
Yeah, the whole experience is just such an isolating experience. And like you said, we're just describing then, like in, olden times, how they used to all come around to the house. Like, I've seen that been done before, and it still is present in some villages. They still do that, and it still is a practice. And you can almost put yourself in that position and almost feel the difference, as opposed to being in a hospital bed, going through a birth, whether it's, at the time, sometimes you don't know how it's going to end. Like, with my rainbow baby, I was petrified that she was going to end up being a stillbirth.
Mm.
So sometimes, like, even through a healthy pregnancy, you're still not guaranteed that. So like, even in the hospital bed, you're sitting there, you're going through the motions, and you're like, I still don't know how this is going to end, and you are alone.
Because nobody wants it, like, because we don't honor death. Like, even when an old person dies, we don't really honor the person. Yeah, there may be a funeral and a wake, and then it's sort of like done, and that's it, we've done it. But grief takes longer than that. And actually, grief can sometimes be a forever conversation. Like, I lost Sprocket, yes, over 6 years ago. And I tell you, I've not felt her as strongly as I did earlier this year. I just felt her around. And I don't actually know why that was and what reason there was for it. But I do think that the whole spirit babies thing is incredibly interesting. And yeah, I don't think that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. And pregnancy and birth are massively spiritual experiences. And also they are massively mundane and sometimes really really hard work. But we're all here because women give birth. We're all here because a woman gave birth to another, like this long chain of connection, all because of our wombs. And so again, I just track it back to this connection to my womb, but also to your womb, because everything that's happened to you, it's not in silo. So all your pregnancies, your sexual experiences, your bleeds each month, they're all linked. And it's a powerful thing, I think.
And it's also a really nice way to sort of think about it too, that you're not alone. Like in these things, like you might not, might not see the person or be able to talk to them, but just know that you're not alone, that you are intricately connected to other women, other energies, other forces, and that you're not the only one that's going through this.
Mm.
I kind of want to circle back now to there's two things I want to talk to you about, which is the
Okay.
castor oil packs, and obviously you have another beautiful ceremony as well, which you call closing of the bones. So, and I think I have heard of that ceremony too, and I'd love to dive into that with you a little bit as well.
Yeah. Okay. So, let's touch on closing of the bones. That's not, I mean, again, that's all over the world. So before we moved to Australia, I lived in Mexico. And so largely people will associate closing of the bones with Mexico. And so I had the great privilege of training with the traditional midwife over there who taught me this beautiful ceremony. And is essentially a time of being wrapped in shawls that are called rebozos. Now, you may have heard of rebozos. They're also used during pregnancy and birth. You can sort of wrap them over your bum, and then someone will sort of like manipulate the rebozo, and it gives comfort to the lower back to a laboring woman. And in the closing of the bone ceremony, you are wrapped and your body is manipulated by the practitioner who's using these rebozos. And it's all about drawing the heat back into our bodies. As a pregnant woman, you expand, your hips widen, your uterus grows, and then as a postpartum woman, though all of those changes, then your uterus goes back to its normal size, your hips change, and so the realignment of your body happens with the tying of the rebozos tightly around your body. And then you are wrapped up like a mummy, for want of a better term, and allowed time and space to just be hugged by these rebozos. It's so beautiful, and I'm so privileged to have learnt that that ceremony. And there are women in Australia that do this ceremony, and it's not just for postpartum women. It's also really good if you're at a sort of crossroads in your life, or a real sense of closing of a chapter. It can be used there as well. And yeah, it's just, if you have lost a baby and you're wanting something to take care of your body, closing of the bones definitely is one avenue to see if there is somebody that does it locally, because it's a magical, beautiful ceremony.
I was actually thinking too, like when we go through these experiences, obviously it affects our nervous system, and it's like trauma to our body. And when you were talking about it being like a hug for your body, it'd be almost like the safety that your body needs in that moment too, like to help process, process the trauma, to process the experience, in that safety. Like, because a hug is essentially, like, when you think about hugging someone, it's always a sense of safety, to be able to be wrapped up in, like, your whole body sort of wrapped up in that would be like providing that sense of safety for your body to help it go through the motions.
In Russia, they do something very similar, and they call it the 7 locks. But also, like, there's different types of hugs, isn't there? You can hug somebody and sort of be like a bit standoffish and sort of like, yeah, or you could properly, I've not seen you for ages, or you're in pain, I'm going to envelop you with my love. And I think the rebozos and the extended period of being wrapped, it's a full-on envelopment. And let's face it, us women, we are starved sometimes of non-sexual touch. And when you do have a live baby and you're breastfeeding, you're touched out, your body hurts and you're tired, and your husband's there around the corner going, hello, like, are we going to have sex tonight? And you're just sort of like, it's just, I need to be touched. I want to be touched, but it's a non-sexual, loving, and for the closing of the bones, it's done by a woman. So it's that sisterly, motherly hug that's all encompassing, and something that you're allowed to relax in, which I think is really beautiful and essential, actually.
Yeah, I think so too. And like you said, yes, there are a multitude of different hugs. I'm definitely the one that, will give hugs to everyone, but you can receive ones back that aren't so loving and are a bit more distant, or be like my cousin who just sort of tips her head into you, like,
oh, right. It's like, that's enough for me.
It's like, that's enough touch. That's it. I'm done. So yeah, absolutely. But I think it's definitely, to me, if I'm sort of thinking and feeling into it, it feels like it would be that, like you said, that enveloping, safety, warm, nourishing kind of sensation for your body.
And that's exactly what it is. And I think who doesn't want that? Like, and I've had women that have fallen asleep during that sort of that time of, because I'll wrap you up and then we'll play some music, or I'll speak over you, and there may be some singing bowls, and this extended time of rest. And falling asleep is like, oh, it's the gold dust, because I'm like, yes, you need sleep, woman. Like, you need sleep. You need to feel so comfortable that you can just let go and relax. And we certainly do need that when we have lost a baby, because relaxing is not high on the agenda, because you just can't, because you're just in too much heartache.
Yeah, it just feels like, it's the last thing on your mind. You're like, I can't stop. But it's the one thing that your body needs,
Mm.
is for you to be able to just stop and just take a moment, just take a breath and allow, in that case, allow yourself to be wrapped up and just have that time for yourself.
Mm. And that's
Um,
another thing. I mean, again, the to answer your second question about the castor oil packs, I mean, that's another thing that you can do that is so nourishing and so comforting, and it's super easy. You just need to get some cold pressed organic castor oil. This is a really thick oil. Like, if you get it on you, like your hands, you're going to have to wash your hands about 5 times, because it's a really thick oil. Get a flannel or a piece of cloth and just douse the cloth in the oil. It's really do it in a glass jar. And top tip, you can then keep it after you've used it, and then pop that in the fridge. Pop a lid on it, and then in the glass jar in the fridge, and then you can reuse it. And how I do it is I put the soaked cloth, like a muslin or a flannel, over your womb. You can do it in your breasts. You can do it over your liver as a really good liver detox. You can do it on your throat if you've got thyroid issues. And then what I like to do, in England we call it cling film. I don't know, what is it? Plastic wrap,
Glad wrap.
yeah, over. Now some people are a bit, so that's a bit of a bone of contention because of the plastic, but you need like a seal, because the oil will leak everywhere. Lie on some old towels, and lie a towel over the plastic, and then a hot water bottle over the top, and lie there for at least 45 minutes, even longer if you can. And the heat will cause the oil to seep through the different layers of your skin, and so healing for our wounds. And also, you will sleep like a baby that night. It is so relaxing. So anyone with insomnia, I would say, have you tried a castor oil pack? Because there's that deep relaxation that happens, that means that you sleep like a baby that night.
I think it's definitely something that I have to try as well. Again, I've heard of it, but I've never actually sort of known, I guess, what to do. I've heard of them as in terms of a practice.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's
so yeah,
mucky. It can be mucky, obviously, and it also can be hilarious. Like, you can't. It's difficult to do, like, wrap yourself with cling film, one-handed, while you're holding this oily cloth. So it is quite funny. But one of the things that I do for women who have lost babies is I will do a castor oil pack with a guided meditation that I have written. And so while you are having the gooey, lovely warmness of the castor oil pack, you're then also connecting to your womb, connecting to your body, connecting to your baby, who is no longer inside your body. And again, that's another way of making the loss sacred and connecting on a spiritual level with what has just happened.
I think it's important to have these practices, these rituals to help us or help our body heal and recover, but also to help us mentally and like emotionally start to process and heal and recover as well. Because it's not just the practice, like you said, like there are added things like the guided meditations, or um even with the yoni steaming, it was like picturing your body releasing the emotions into the bowl and having the practice of putting it outside. Like there's so much more to it just than just the
The mechanics.
the mechanics of it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually allowing yourself to heal through something that is unthinkable, even to yourself. Like you said, even in your own journey, and I know with mine, like pregnancy loss is never on your radar when you're falling pregnant, or when you're in that whole trying to conceive and wanting to have a family. Like that's never on your radar. So it's unthinkable to you, but it's also unthinkable to other people once you have gone through it, and then they can't be there for you. So then you're like, well, I've got to do this for myself. I've got to be here for myself first. And having these beautiful practices are the way that you can be there for yourself.
Yeah, and it does not have to be complicated. I mean, you can make it as elaborate as you want. Like if you want to go and have some oracle cards and I don't know, play some beautiful music and set the stage and do another thing that I speak about with women who are grieving is our womb space is also the seat of our creativity. And so sometimes if there's no place for that creativity to go, it can be really destructive for our physical bodies, but also like just because we then get nitpicky or we'll be arguey or we'll be sort of like, just leave me the fuck alone. And then, but if you have some sort of creative outlet, even though it may not be linked to the fact that you are grieving the fact that you've given birth to death, not life, there is something very cathartic and healing about that. Now that can also look like doing a flower mandala in your garden or in a part of your room, or setting an altar in your room. Now that doesn't have to be full of like loads of woohoo stuff. It can be just a picture of you and your man, and some flowers and maybe a bowl of water, and incorporate all of the elements in. And that's a place that you go to light a candle, just to remember and go, okay, this is for me, so that I have a place physically to go to and to look at while I'm grieving. It doesn't have to be complicated. If your friend doesn't know how to broach the subject of your loss, then just say to them, light me a candle when you're thinking of me. And if you want to swing me a photo of it, then I know. You don't have to say anything more than that. But then that shows you, and it gives them something practical to do that's easy. Just light a candle. Everybody's got candles. But what do we do when we go into like a Catholic church? We light a candle for a loved one. So why wouldn't we do that for the loved one that we don't know? Because we didn't get to meet our baby. We don't know what they look like. We don't know what life they could have had and how they would have impacted our life. So lighting a candle for them, connecting with them, writing a letter to them, all of those things give all of that emotion a place to go.
I particularly like the candle idea because I mean, it's something that I've done, for myself as well, is just lighting a candle. And sometimes I'll just sit and watch the flame, because that's just, and then, allow anything to come. If something wants to come, if nothing wants to come, then that's okay. I just sit and watch the flame. But that in itself can be a really powerful thing too. And you said, and I hadn't even thought about the church, the Catholic Church, but I was, born and raised Catholic, so that was something that we did as well. And I would I hadn't made the connection myself, but there was always that a candle was my go-to for me to remember and to be able to create a safe space for me to talk. If I wanted to talk, if I didn't feel like it, that was okay. just allowed whatever wanted to come through in those moments.
Mm,
And I think the letters are a really powerful idea as well. I've heard women writing letters to their babies, but also writing letters to themselves and to their past self that went through the loss and to their future self as well.
mm,
Um, but I also like the idea of, if you don't know what to say to a friend or a family member as well, like tell them just to light a candle. Like if they don't know what to say or they don't know what to do, that is something so simple for them to do as well.
mm. Yeah. And like if it's so hard, even as a woman who has experienced loss, when you hear about a friend who is going through that, you are not everybody is like Russell Brand and as eloquent as that. But sometimes there are no words. And actually no words are needed. You just have to be present. And I think so many people in our lives shy away from the tough stuff. Like family members might go, oh no, we can't go there, we don't talk about that. And it might be a generational thing. Like I know my grandmother, you just didn't talk about those sort of things. You didn't talk about the hard times. Maybe it was because they were English, but just knowing that if somebody's saying, I don't know what to do, and you then give them a practical thing, just light me a candle. It might be that in 2 weeks' time, you get a photo of a candle and you know exactly what that means. And it gives you comfort. So simple.
And it would give the person comfort as well, knowing that they're doing what, I don't want to say right or wrong, but they're feeling like they're doing the right thing for you.
Yeah.
Like they're
Light a
doing
candle,
something.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I could talk to you all day, as I think we have already discussed
Yeah, I know.
before we jump.
We've run this call for quite some time.
Yes. Um, I would love for you to share where people can find you, and see what more you are, like more you have to offer and where they can find all your tools and resources and all of that good
Yeah.
stuff.
So I am on social media. I'm on Instagram as The Woman's Sanctum, two S's in the middle, but I should be easy to find through because you follow me. So get me through there. Also, thewomanssanctum.com is my website. And so that's where you can see all the services that I provide. And I am at the moment writing an ebook all around pregnancy loss and practical ways to process it, and also some of the rituals and ceremonies ideas that you can do as a practical way to honor the loss and honor that baby.
Oh, all sounds so amazing. I'll make sure that I link everything in the show notes as well. So you're just one click away.
Yeah.
And I had an idea that just came to me and it's left me. But oh, if there's anything that Lisa has said inside of the episode that you want to explore more with her, just send her a DM.
Yes, definitely. My DMs are always open. I work with women who have lost babies, but also if you've had a traumatic birth,
Mm.
it does seem like they are correlated. There is a link. I know that's my lived experience, and that's another thing that we don't talk about in our culture. And the tagline of you've got a healthy baby, that's all that matters. Mother, woman, you matter. And so it's, yes, you've got this beautiful healthy baby, but birth trauma can be devastating to your body, to your psyche, to your relationship, how you mother. And so that's another thing that I'm incredibly passionate about, because birth trauma affects 1 in 4 women, I think it is. It might even be 1 in 3. They've just recently been doing a birth trauma summit in Australia, because it affects so many of us, and not many women feel that they can talk about it because they're meant to be grateful, right? They've got their baby, and that's, yeah, it devastated my life. So yeah.
It is a very, very important topic to talk about. And it's something that I'm so passionate about as well. In terms of, pregnancy loss being trauma, it can be a very traumatic experience that women don't allow themselves the space to feel into, because it is so squashed by, our conditioning, by society. Like, you've just got to get on with it. There's nothing, you're allowed to grieve. Why are you so upset? But, pregnancy loss in my experience was a very traumatic experience. And then understanding how trauma affects our body and how it can actually affect your unborn babies in future pregnancies as well. And then also, like you said, having to go through the actual birth experience and then having your living child and you not being able to be the person that you want to be because you have trauma. It just has this huge ripple effect through so many different areas. And it is such an important topic to talk about. And to know that there is support for, and that you're allowed to, if it feels big and it feels like a traumatic experience to you, then it's allowed to be. That is big, and it has been for you. And just because, Jane down the road had the same experience and she's okay, doesn't diminish your experience at all.
Yeah. And I think, again, I mean, we haven't had time to touch on this, but we are sexual beings. And so pregnancy loss, birth trauma, these are two things that really affect us sexually. And how in that sort of the disconnect that can so easily happen when you just don't want to be touched, because especially around your womb, your vagina, that's where the trauma sits, because you gave birth to a baby there, and you were touched and violated sometimes. Many women are violated during birth. And so then how do I navigate as a sexual person after that? And that's something, again, that I speak to women about, because it is so important. We are capable of such sexual pleasure, and we are robbed of that because we can't process our grief if we lose our babies. We can't, there's no outlet to speak around the trauma that we are holding if we've had a really terrifying birth experience in the hospital, or even in our home. Birth trauma can happen in the home births as well. And I guess for me, the importance of the work that I do with women is, you are meant to live an amazing, sovereign, pleasurable life. And you can, after birth trauma, you can, after pregnancy loss, these things do happen to us, but it doesn't need to mean that the rest of our lives are a shit show because of them. It might be a shitty part of our life, but or a shitty day, but not a shitty life. And there is joy to be had on the other side of grief and the other side of trauma.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful piece of awareness too. Yes, it's allowed to be shit right now, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be shit for the rest of your life. And also, if anyone is feeling like they are experiencing, any resistance towards them, connecting to themselves sexually or connecting to their partners after loss, that's something that you can support them with as well. You can open up the conversation with them and support them in terms of how they can start to reconnect to themselves and how as sexual beings, and then how they can reconnect to their partners as well. Because it is a really difficult time to navigate, and there isn't anyone out there that actually tells you what you can do. And then you start having relationship issues. And then you start, like, again, adding that blame, guilt, shame on top of everything else that you're feeling because you feel you can't connect to your partner now. So it is a very, very huge piece of the puzzle as well. And I'm grateful that you're able to also support them in that area of their life and healing and recovery as well. So if that's something that they need support with, they can DM you as well.
Certainly, or email me at lisa@thewomansanctum.com. But yeah, on my website there's all the info that you need, really.
Yeah, all such powerful topics that we've talked on today. So thank you so much, Lisa, for being a part of the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast.
Oh, an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all that have listened in. If this episode was valuable to you, I invite you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode. Thank you for listening in with me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Take a screenshot of this episode, share it to social media, and tag me at instituteofhealing_PL. I love seeing what is resonating with you right now. If you want to chat further, I invite you to connect with me through Instagram. Head over and follow my Instagram account, send me a DM, and let's open the communication. If you want to know more about how you can be the support for others, head to the show notes and fill out the application form for the Pregnancy Loss Practitioner certification. I want to also note here that what I share within the episodes is not medical advice. If you need further support, please consult your doctor. Thank you again. Much love to you. Be gentle with yourself, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode.